thanks for the intro. My name's Jess, and I mentioned in my pitch that I went to Melbourne earlier this year to see Adam Grant talk. And he kind of covered a lot of his work, most recently his new book. But I am going to try and condense 3 hours of knowledge and a lifetime of his research into 30 minutes. So wish me luck. But if you don't know who he is an organisational psychologist who has basically written literally 3 books on how to make work not suck. So, there's sort of 8, there were many more, but there are 8 key messages or themes that I took away from his talk, and I'm going to talk you through them today. And they are all about unlocking your potential, and as leaders, how do we unlock the potential of others around us? So, we'll get straight into it. Growth over ego. It's not something that we don't know. We've heard this a billion times before, but it's the trickiest thing to do, right? Like when you get damning feedback, it's really hard to live by this. So people tend to give you feedback in the form of a compliment sandwich. Again, not a new concept, but what happens is if, depending where you are on the narcissism scale, you might just sort of hear, I'm pretty good. Beginning and end, I heard I'm great. And then if you have imposter syndrome, you're probably only going to remember the criticism. So what can we do, or what can you do as an individual to encourage people to give you the feedback that you need to hear? And start by paying attention to how you respond to feedback. So we want you to get an A for how you received the feedback of a C-. So Adam Grant talks about this being the second score. So if we can master how we react to it and get an A, then people might feel more comfortable to give you hard feedback, and probably the feedback that you need to hear. But not all critics are critical thinkers, but it doesn't mean that they shouldn't be listened to. So there's something that we can learn from these comments, but we have to figure out a way to not instinctively just cut it out or block them out, especially people that you work with day to day, because you kind of know them really familiarly and you're like, I don't really respect their opinion, but there might be something in it. So just because we don't like the feedback, it doesn't mean that they're wrong. Sometimes we need to sort of chase the unpleasant truths rather than going for the comforting lies. Christy was my boss. So I hope you don't mind me telling the story. On my first week of this gig, she was my first new boss in this industry, and we had a workshop, and I was kind of shadowing, so learning the lay of the land, and there was 2 other people facilitating. Christy joined just to observe all of us. And at the end, I could see her in the background filling out all these post-it notes. And I thought, cool, she's going to put something on the wall. No, that didn't happen. I'm like, what's she doing back there? And then we got to the end, we were tidying up the room, and still those post-it notes were just sort of in her hand. I'm thinking, God, this is what's going on. And as we're sort of tidying up, clients left the room. I said, all right, cool. Lucy, great job. Cornell, fucking smashing as always. Jess, you kind of did nothing. And I was like, okay. And she's like you're billable by the hour. Clients are paying for you. You need to always be adding value. You can't just be sitting there. Even if you don't really know what you're doing, do something. And I don't know what you guys would have thought, like when you left the room and Cornell said to me, are you okay? And I don't know, you just have to think about how I might have been feeling in that moment. And the reality is, up until that moment, it's exactly how I was feeling. I was feeling useless. I didn't really like the contributions that I did make. And I was kind of just like, it's not really working. This wasn't great. And so what I learned from that was that, 1, I got to trust my instinct. I learned to believe my intuition that I didn't do a good job. But the other thing is I learned to trust my new boss. She's going to tell me the uncomfortable truths the unpleasant truths rather than the comfortable lies. So, up until that point, I guess I hadn't really asked for feedback. But if you are going to ask for feedback, don't really ask for it. Ask for advice instead. Because feedback focuses on what has happened in the past, but advice is always framed as what you can do different next. And so it's always positive, it's always about growth. And so this is how you turn your critics into coaches, is coaches always want to focus on what you can do better next time. Critics tend to just sort of feel good about knowing that you did something wrong. It's a bit of an ego thing for them as well. So I guess in leadership, you might find, so flipping back to the other people, if you're in a leadership position, you might be one of the good people who actually ask, how am I going? Am I doing a good job at leading you? Do you need anything else from me? And you might find that people don't actually give you any feedback. They're like, yeah, sure, you're great. And I can imagine it's really tempting to go, I'm like good. I'm pretty good. I'm a great leader. But don't mistake silence for being good, because there are many reasons why you don't get the feedback that you might be seeking. And that is because we need to be able to demonstrate that we can handle the truth. Because as you gain power and status, people become reluctant to be honest, because it could potentially, there's a fear of the perception of you, how it might impact your ongoing relationship. Sometimes people just aren't really sure if I'm raising the right issue. Is it important enough to bother them? But the other one is really, have I demonstrated to my team that I can actually receive feedback and criticism? So we can do this by criticizing yourself out loud. And so active things that you can do, and you can do this on Monday when you go in. Share the feedback that you've been given and proactively ask what you could be doing differently, and be transparent about your growth goals, just as much as you're aware of what their growth goals are. And that transparency creates trust, we understand where we're at, and we're all building to be the better versions of ourselves. So actual scripting, you can use this. These are the things you can say as a leader. Here are the things I'm bad at. Here are the things that I've been told I need to work on. And here are the things that I'm actively working on. Because studies have actually shown that if you expose your weaknesses that you're working on, people are actually less likely to criticize you. But yeah, it can be difficult because we don't want to expose ourselves. We don't want to tell everyone what our weaknesses are. But the reality is, everyone who works closely with you, they already know what you're not good at. They know what you're bad at. There's no secrets. So you may as well get the credit for being humble, having the humility and the integrity to say it out loud and work as a team. So I'm going to jump to hiring. Again, these are themes, so there's some sort of through lines, and sometimes we just jump straight to another topic. Hiring, and how to find the diamonds when you're hiring. So think about if you've ever gone for a job that you really, really wanted, and you're good for it, but you kind of gaffed the interview. First interview, or maybe the second one, whatever it was, but you gaffed it. But you know that you're the one for this team. You don't get it, job's given to someone else. But maybe think about if you're in a hiring position, is there someone that maybe you let go a little bit too soon? You sort of went, they were pretty bad. You went with someone else. But next minute you see them working over somewhere else at another company, and they're absolutely thriving. They're one of their best. What did I miss? Well, maybe it was just because they didn't do a very good job on the first interview. So I want to talk about the do-over. And the do-over is really about, when someone might have the chops, but didn't really do so well, so you move on, you hire someone else. I learned about an employer who actively asked people at the end of the interview process, or one of the interviews, how did you feel like you went? Especially if it went kind of bad, when it's not going well. Ask them their perspective. How do you feel like they went? And if they think oh yeah, sweet man, I've nailed it. You're like, okay, self-awareness needs some work. But what about maybe if they said, you know what, I don't feel like I did very well. That was really uncomfortable. I'm sorry, I know I'm better than this, but this was not my best. This employer would offer them and extend them an opportunity for a do-over. That's cool. We all have off days. Come back next week. we'll do it again. Probably not the same script. You might want to have a backup interview process, but essentially you're looking for the same things. But what you're really looking for is people who can grow between that interview and the follow-up interview. So we're really looking for growth as opposed to just having the best speaker on the day. Because some of your best employees might be really quiet, might be really shy, but they're absolute guns when they know they've got the job and they've got the security of the job. So don't hire people with the most ability. Don't hire people with the most ability, hire people with the most agility. We want to see that difference. We want to see the growth. We need to know that when we hire this person, we're not hiring them necessarily at their best and at their peak. We're hiring the people that have demonstrated the ability to grow, learn, and take on feedback. Oh, I might have... So, a little question for you if you're in hiring kind of positions. Maybe think about in the last year or 2 years, if there's anyone that you've interviewed and maybe you gave up on them a little bit too quick, like they didn't do well. If you had an opportunity to interview them again, what would you do different? How would you interview them? Because we, as people who apply for jobs, we craft our response to the job application. So I guess employers could also craft the interview to the applicant. So again, jumping around, new topic, crafting your own job. So once you land the job, what if you're in there for a few years and you start to flatline a little bit? You know, some of your best people can flatline very easily. I worked with a guy a few years ago. I was managing a really small team, and he was like our best dude. Like everyone loved him. He was a culture carrier, and I will talk about that in a minute. But he was eager and he was passionate and just brought everyone around him. And I noticed he started to get bored, kind of, dragging his feet, a little bit disgruntled. I was like, man, what do I do? Like, how do I change the situation? I was very, novice, not really a whole lot of training at that point. But I printed out his job description and I sat with him. I was like, hey, dude, let's go through this like item by item, like all the tasks and all the things you do. Let's cross out the shit that you don't like doing. And I'll take that on for a little while. And I want you to write down the same amount of things that we've taken out, new responsibilities, things you want to learn, things you want to grow, whatever it is. The next day, or within the week, he showed up to work, back at him as himself, doing more for the company, doing extra things that I didn't have the time to do. He wanted to do a few things that I was doing. I didn't have the time to get to it. So the reality is, people... I guess I didn't know that this was a tactic until I saw Adam Grant speak at the beginning of the year. I was just totally flying blind. But it works. But it's probably the most feared, management tactic for any company, because, what do? Just give someone free rein to write their job? Not really. I mean, obviously it still has to align to the company strategy and their vision. We're not just going to throw that all out the window because we want to, appease someone's curiosity. But if it aligns, then why not do it? Because if we let people do this, they do more great things. So we all do this, ultimately. We're trying to find these new techniques. How do we keep our employees engaged and passionate and want to show up, not because they have to, not because they have a salary, but because they really love what they do? Because if they're not doing that, this is probably what they're thinking. Do I stay? Do I leave? And if they choose to leave, then what are you going to do? Probably going to conduct an exit interview? Does you guys have those? Anyone? Have you ever thought about the motivation for an exit interview, like the questions you ask? I mean, if you think about it, they've already gone. The things that they say that sucked, they didn't work for them. You make those changes, but the people who are left didn't have a problem with those things. So why are you making changes for someone who's already left? So Adam Grant talks about the idea of a stay interview. So review your exit interview questions and flip them into slightly more relevant context about why do you want to stay? What could I do to convince you to stay? What needs to change in your role to stay for another year, 2 years? How can I get you more invested? So an exit interview, useful, maybe. Feels a little like 90s HR process to me. I'm not as young as I made myself sound then. So people will also leave for other reasons too, though. Culture. And culture is a really, really hard one to pin down because it's kind of based on personalities and whether you buy into it, whether you actually contribute to culture or not. So we have this, Adam, not we, sorry. Him and I study together and we do all this research. No, Adam has this theory about the concept of givers and takers. So I'm going to ask a quick little question to sort of demonstrate what I mean by a taker. So I'm going to get you to put your hand in the air in a second, and I'm going to sort of go like, 10 to 20%, blah, 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 and raise your hand with what you think it is. How many people do you think steal on average, do you think people steal on average like $10 a day from the workplace? That could be, stationery, paper, pens, trivial things. It could be the forks, because they're always gone. And it could be time, like legitimate resource that people get paid for, all of that. So show of hands, we can have a think about it. Who steals the percentage of companies that, just a straight up yes. Average of people. Who do we think in a company? 0 to 20%. Optimists in the room. What about 21 to 40% of people steal? Okay, look around. Who's doing that? What about, did I say 41 to 60? Was that one just then? All right. 41 to 60? Okay. And what about 61 to 80%? What about 81 to 100? Okay. So, research of integrity studies over the last 35 years have actually suggested that the higher your estimate is, the greater the chance that you are a thief. Sorry. Luckily, the cameras are going this way, not that way, so you're safe. Generally, as a rule, ask anyone what they think of a topic. Ask anyone what they think the general public or the world thinks on a particular topic, and their response is generally just a reflection of what they think of a particular topic.
There are exceptions, right?
Always. It's like French. Random thing, but French is annoying. The givers or a taker. Have you guys followed Adam Grant's work at all and are kind of familiar with this concept? All right, cool. I will say a lot of familiar things for you then. But essentially, takers anticipate that others will take from others as well. And I think, conversely, people who are givers also expect that other people would and should give as much as they do. So the thing is, givers are willing to do way more that's outside of their job description. They will share knowledge, they will organise this, they will, what else have I got written here? They will teach skills, they mentor, they go over and above, because what's important to them is the collective success of everyone around them. And they're lovely people. I don't know where I sit. Hopefully I'm a giver, I think so. Whereas takers tend to hoard knowledge instead of sharing it. Or maybe they're, throw your minds back to the days of uni, or kind of be that person that sits in the back of a group assignment and does a bit of fuck all. And generally in our context, probably people take credit for your work. And that one hurts, because you worked hard. And people taking credit for your work is one of the most toxic things we can do to people in a work environment. One that I've thrown in there is like that resting bored face on Teams. Like, it's energy, and I don't want to get all woo-woo here, but like, it's really hard to give an engaging talk and you've got people going, it's hard. So pay attention to that face. Give them smiles, nod along, engage, and it'll change the way that they can provide or give you the information as well. You're all delightful, by the way. Look at all your smiles, thank you. So this was really interesting to me. The negative impact of a taker on a culture is triple the positive impact of a giver. So I'll say it again. The negative impact of a taker on a culture is triple the positive impact of a giver. So I guess that means if you've let one taker into your team, paranoia starts to spread. And it's not in your head. They're really out to get you. Like they are. They're there to take from you. That, by definition of the name of what they do, they're there to take. So the paranoia is real, and the workplace becomes toxic. So generally, the default response is givers will step in, and they'll try and manage it, and they'll try and do what they can do to make it better, to engage people, to console, to create new, wonderful ways of bringing people together. But if this statement is true, then it only takes one bad apple to start spoiling the barrel. And I'm not a pirate, that's the other room. And so it's really important that we pay attention to who the takers are in our organisations. And small side story, I was actually, after this talk, I was working with someone and I just had this like gut feel, and like I said, paranoia, it's real. I had this gut feel that this person was sharing a presentation and that they were going to take a lot of credit for my work. And generally, you always try and want to believe that you don't care about that stuff, but it does, you take it home with you. And I just thought, after this talk, I was inspired. I'm like, what can I do to change the outcome of this? And so I went back through the presentation in the morning before we gave it in the afternoon, and I put badges on every bit of information, that template, this framework, this random idea, this thing, and I credited who I got that idea from. This framework came from Cornell. This was from this blog. This gem was from Christy in her talk from last year's UX camp. And I just dotted it all through. And then it flipped to the other person to present their part. And it was just magic, It felt like this kind of strange experience where I just manipulated this weird future where they did what I did. And all of a sudden I was like, and Jess did this, and we did that, and this person. And I thought, wow, this was such a different outcome to the meeting. And then all of a sudden we're like best buds at the end. We're like, no, you're cool. No, you're the best. It was like, what are we doing here? It started potentially to be really awful. And it was great. So I guess the lesson in that is, one, his work is actually tangible. You can take this stuff to your workplace and change things instantly. It's not like a slow progress thing. You can do it as an individual. Again, to go back to the title of the talk, do you have to be a leader to lead? Absolutely not. But we need to talk about these high-performing takers. And if you heard in my pitch, we also like to call them high-performing dickheads. So these are the people who are really good at their craft. They might speak well, they present well, they actually are a great designer or a great dev or whatever it is, but they're kind of doing all the things I was talking about. They're hoarding knowledge, they're taking credit, they're like, in your meeting, just give me some nice positive feedback. We're here to spend 8 hours together. Let's be charming and friends. We have to get along, but small things we can uplift each other. So why don't these people do it? And why, what can we do about high-performing takers? And there are two things. The first is, I think you need to consider what high-performing is. Because high-performing isn't just being good at your craft. It's contributing to people's daily life and making sure that everyone else wants to show up to work because we have a beautiful community. And then if that doesn't work, we weed them out. And what I mean by weeding them out is not by getting them fired, not by treating them, bullying them, don't go down a toxic route yourself. But there are actually things you can do. And I have opted for randomly beautiful slides rather than readability because I don't often get an opportunity for random creativity. But that ring says, create a reciprocity ring. And so what is a reciprocity ring? It's essentially, it can either be an active ongoing group or an activity or a community that you have within your organization where people, everyone who you choose, diverse group, large, small, intimate, group of 5, 10, whatever, and everyone brings a problem that they need help solving, and everyone is expected to give advice or link to a resource or some kind of contribution to help solve these people's problems. And so what happens here is that the givers, who are generally people who just go and do things for themselves, for other people, they don't ask for help. It's training these people to also actually ask for help and ask and lean on their entire team. But what it also does is it puts the takers in kind of an awkward expectation setting where they should give, and they need to come with a resource. They need to come with an idea, and it will start to train those behaviours and force people to start giving rather than only taking. So we can use our reciprocity rings to engage the weaker ties, which are the takers. And you can also start a bit smaller, a dialogue between a giver and a taker. So literally a giver practicing their asking for help or something says, "Hi, I'd like your advice on something." And it is so much more work and effort to give feedback. I don't ever have to write performance reviews or anything like that. It's a lot of work. You take a lot of consideration in writing the right thing. So it's a lot of work to give feedback. And so by asking a taker directly, "I'd like your advice on something," they're kind of put into a position where they have to start learning how to give. Now, I touched on culture carriers a little bit earlier when I was talking about one of my old colleagues, and I want to talk about what they are. So you're going to kind of imagine it in your workplace. So I want you to reflect where you work and all the people that you work with, and think about those who sort of add value throughout the day, the kind of people who uplift the general community, they create connections, they're always there to inspire, they're always there to teach. For me, it's a no-brainer. I have a few. There's a list. I've graded them. No, I haven't. Have I? And so those are the people who, for me, are the culture carriers. And so if I was to go into your company and you were to give me 5 minutes with one person, and I needed to leave with the expectation or the understanding of what is so special about working where you work, that's the person. Give me 5 minutes with them. It might not be the whole company. It might not be the truth of the company, but that's what you value and show up to work for, that kind of person. So it's a lot of responsibility for someone, but what do we do with it? Well, this is probably the only off-script, non-Adam Grant thing in the talk, but I think you need to give them the mic. So not this one, I still need it, but probably put them in charge of recruiting or onboarding, or if they're not quite there yet, put them in charge of team meetings, leading other initiatives, or speaking at all hands, all sorts of things. Kind of give them the platform to start speaking and being visible. Most importantly, study what they do, but don't take from them, because then you're a taker. Because sometimes the initiatives that these culture carriers have, it's really organic, and that's what people buy into. And sometimes that comes from the bottom, that comes from the junior, that comes from mid or senior. Trying to implement cool culture, come to work for pizza on Fridays, because these guys have got money, but not the vibe. Like that's real, and I know that's a struggle for most companies. So when you have these beautiful culture carriers and they just create organically, people gravitate towards their ideas, let them run with it. Don't take it away from them. Don't corporatize it, but just offer support. Here's the if, as always, if it aligns with your company strategy. So not total free reign, but if it aligns with your company strategy, just let them run with it. Offer support. What can I do to help you? Do you need $500 to do the thing, to host an event? Whatever, I don't know, whatever it is. But the thing with the culture carriers is because they have and they do carry so much of the weight and the responsibility of your team and their mood. If something happens to them which is not enjoyable, all of a sudden they don't want to start showing up to work, the rest of the culture suffers too, because the positive culture that they are bringing is now not there because they don't have the capacity to keep uplifting when they're down here. And so this is where we rely on our other culture carriers. It can kind of be a good thing because it gives other culture carriers the opportunity to step up and go, I recognize that you're having a hard time. What can I do to fill the void? And I think that in doing that, we kind of inspire our other culture carriers to come back to life. You might need to fashion them a brand new mic, but it goes back to them, and we're just all there to support our culture carriers. So, making things familiar, jumping away from culture carriers. This is, I'm going to check the time. Okay, 5 minutes. I'm going to get you all to do like a thing, which might be awkward, but and it might be a bit loud, but not too loud because there's only a few here, which is nice. But I want you to think of a song, like a well-known song, and you're going to turn to the person next to you, and I want you to clap the tone or the song to the person sitting next to you. I'm going to do 1 minute. It's going to be chaotic. It's going to sound awful from me, but hopefully in your little bubble, you hear what's going on. So I will look at the person next to you and decide who's going to clap and who's going to listen. All right, I think I kind of almost heard something in the middle there where I'm like, we were on the same page when I did this activity. Okay, so now I'm going to get you all to stand up. I know, we do this so much in these kinds of things, don't we? Now, if anyone guessed it correctly, I want you to stay standing and everyone else sit down. All right. Happy birthday? No. What was yours?
It was ABBA, Gimme, Gimme, Gimme.
What? Okay. Morgie?
Yeah, Casey's was happy birthday.
Happy birthday. All right, knew it. What about you guys?
Mine was Three Blind Mice.
Three Blind Mice? Yeah. I was going to say Mary Had a Little Lamb. Yeah, so basically, you can sit down now, sorry. So when we do that activity, people generally predict that around 50% of us are going to get it. Like, we know it's a little bit of a random thing to do. We guess that 50% are going to do it, we're going to guess it. But the reality is 2% of the people can guess it. And so if we can apply that to, I guess, our communication, our strategy, our ideas, how we communicate, what we have spent a long time trying to work on, think of this. Because what's happening when someone's clapping is they can hear the song in their head, and all the other person is hearing is like random, abstract clapping, and you're like, I've got no idea, guys. And so the problem that we have there is the curse of knowledge. So we can't imagine, as the person clapping, that they can't hear what I'm hearing, because to me it's so obvious and so clear. So when we come to corporate communication, this kind of thing happens. Our corporate strategy targets acquisitions, integrating value, and initiatives to enrich our culture. We're driving change and securing market dominance. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. Like I said, okay, computer, it should be ChatGPT. But what's happening here is we've lost something that's familiar. We don't hear it, we don't understand it, we all understand the words, but it's pretty banal and it's not catchy and it's not something that I'm going to grip onto. So when we try and communicate these things, whatever it is, we need to try and make it relatable and something familiar. I'll talk about Disney for a little minute, and I think we're good for time. Basically, Disney's success was built on the fact that they had sort of a 3-step process. 1, borrow a fairy tale. 2, turn it into a cartoon. 3, make a shitload of money. And that was their strategy, and it worked for a really long time, up until sort of late 80s, early 90s, and they really started to flop, and they were going through lots of turmoil. They didn't know what to do. They'd lost their direction. They'd run out of fairy tales. And then someone said, well, what if we do Hamlet? And then out of that was the most successful film, highest grossing in 1994. Does anyone know what it is? Yeah, The Lion King, exactly. So, the lesson there, I guess, being that if we make it familiar, things stick. Find ways to be less, I guess, expected, banal. We don't have to be smart in our language to communicate a good strategy. A good strategy is one that lands, not one that sounds smart. So, quick little recap. We want to value our growth over ego. I was going to say the other for a sec. We want to value our growth over ego. We want to turn our critics into coaches. We need to demonstrate that we can handle the truth. To find diamonds, we might need to give people a second chance. Explore crafting your own job, or allowing the people that work with you to craft their own job. Really focus on cultivating givers, changing the behaviour of the takers. Embrace your culture carriers, give them the mic, study what they do, but do not take from them. And ultimately, make what you're trying to do really familiar. So these are all of the things that Adam Grant talks about across a series of books. He has, I think he's written a couple others, but these are the main ones that I have paid attention to. He's got a podcast, he's done a lot of other things. I listen to him all the time. It's like my therapy. He's wonderful. So, to answer, can only leaders lead? Absolutely not. We can all do all of this to lead from above and within. Thanks.